Dave, you're cruising the family truckster. Man, you look comfortable.
John, this is pretty much what I do these days with 2 little kids around the house.
Problem is, though, we got a clunk underneath there. Took a vibration analyzer, put a sensor on all 4 corners. We really need to go off-road and start to see if we can get this thing to rattle.
It's right up here, okay?
Great.
Okay.
Let's see what happens. There it goes. All right, let me check these channels out. Oh, there it is, Dave. Look at that.
Oh,
Channel 1.
All right, cool.
Bingo. That's on the left front. Take care of it.
All right, let's take it in the tech garage.
Well, we got our family truckster up in the air and we're ready to go. Welcome to Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com. Well, you saw we had a little bit of a rattle or a clunk going on. So we could see under here we actually have the transmitter connected right there. That was on channel 1. And we figured out it was coming out from this side of the van. So we got it up in the air and we're ready to start checking it out. And what I did, I just took a pry bar and I basically went up and down on the suspension and checked several points. And you can see right here, if I pull up and down on it, you can actually see that rear of that control arm, that whole bushing there shot. But you know, the bottom line is everything's pretty much shot under here, a lot of these components. So our friends at rockauto.com, well, they hooked us up with a whole set. But you know, it's also pulling a little bit to the left as we go down the road, and everybody wants to go down and get in alignment when that happens. And most people, like Dave, you let me borrow this, don't have $100. You're going down the road and said, hey, pull out a Benjamin and say, I want to get in alignment. Matter of fact, I'll keep this. Don't let them know I borrowed it. So you can look at this pre-alignment inspection, because most cars won't even need alignment, and that graphic's pretty simple there. You can take a look at it. On the left-hand side, they're going to take it on a road test, tire pressures. They're going to check all the rubber bushings, and we'll do this all after the commercial. The shock mounts, the steering links, all the way over on the right side, ball joints, power steering, tire wheels, alignment, everything to make sure it's right first. As a matter of fact, probably 9 out of 10 cars don't even make it to the alignment rack because something's wrong underneath. So what are we going to do here? Well, we got a bunch of components here. You can see they sent us a strut. We're going to replace the strut. Why? Because they rattle, they clunk. You can see the upper part of the strut right here. You actually have the strut bushing and bearings up there. You don't want to take that off. That's what that sticker's all about. Connects down to the spindle right there. You got some sway links. Now on the sway links themselves, they also have the connectors right here. Both of these articulate and move, wear out over time. You can have ball joints here on both sides, upper lower ball joints sometimes. These wear out over time. And you can have that bushing like ours is actually blown out down there. Now we chose to get the whole control arm. You can see it right here, all in one piece. The ball joint's connected right there, and then you have the bushing back here. So you put it up there in one whole piece. That makes the job a lot easier than doing the whole thing. So we're gonna have to replace our control arm on our van. Matter of fact, we'll replace everything, but we need to start with the control arm. And I say that pretty lightly. We'll replace everything. I'm not getting all nasty.
You always use this word, we. I don't think you know what that word means.
No, I don't. You know what? You guys have fun.
All right, we're going to have fun here. It's actually going to be a pretty simple process, Josh. I've got one bolt up here by the ball joint, another bolt for me right here. And what do you have in the back?
I just have 2 right here, and I think I'm going to take these out. I think we can slide this lower control on them out, but just in case we can't, I'll get a screw jack, put it up here, take this bracket down, but we should be good to go.
So we can do it without taking the bracket out.
Exactly.
All right, we're hoping for easy. We'll see how it turns out. And plus, when we come back, John's got to look at a lot of different suspension systems. We'll be right back with more Tech Garage presented by rockauto.com.
Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com, is brought to you by Magic Creeper, the most versatile creeper ever. AP Laser, leading the way. And by rockauto.com, all the parts your car will ever need.
Thanks for riding along with Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com. Well, we got the control arm out of our Nissan, John, and it doesn't look too great. It's actually seen better days. This is a piece of the bushing, so you can see it was dry rotted, and it was time for that thing to come out. So we got a brand new assembly for the entire control arm from our friends at rockauto.com.
That's the easy way to do it, Dave. You might as well get started, but meanwhile, I have a whole smorgasbord of suspension components.
A veritable buffet of bushings, eh?
Well, you got that right. Where do we start? So many cool things when it comes to suspension. Let's start with this one over here called a McPherson strut system. This McPherson strut system, it's called that basically because of the strut right here. You can see this is a McPherson strut. It's connected to the top of the vehicle here to the frame. It goes down and it's bolted to the spindle. I can turn it to the left or right, you see the spindle rotates, and then you have a rotator plate up here at the top of it. Now you can do a jounce test, bounce the vehicle up and down, make sure it's not bouncing like a baby buggy. It's a good way to check it, and we'll look at a couple other ones here in a second. Down here on the bottom is a spindle assembly bolted to the caliper, and then on the back side here you have the actual steering system. This one happens to be a rack and pinion steering system that's going from the left to the right, and then down below it you have a control arm down there. Now, a couple things you want to look for when it comes to checking out your suspension system is things like a leaking strut. You can see this right here. All this goopity goop on here, this is actually coming out of there. That's not good. You can check it for rattles. Make sure you shake it back and forth, go over hills, check the bushings, make sure they're not moving as well. You can always take your wheel at 6 o'clock or 12 o'clock and try to rock it up and down, or you can spin it in the air. We've done this before. You hear this bearing? That grinding sound means that that's bad. It's really hard to turn, and it's herky-jerky when you go to turn it. Not a good thing. Also, you're down on your control arms. When you're doing your control arms, look at your ball joints. It shouldn't be flopping around like this one. The boot should not be torn, and the bushings should not be flopping around like these were. And basically, this is what Dave found on there. These bushings were all flopping around, and that's what was making the clunking noise. Now, you want to address that stuff so it doesn't end up like this mess here. This actually fell off a car. They brought it to Tech Garage, and that's what happened. The bearing started to get loose, started to clunk around, actually broke the whole spindle assembly sitting on the side of the road with the wheel on the ground. Very dangerous situation. So check out your suspension system. Make sure it's in tip-top shape. Let's shift gears a bit. Let's look a little bit about the actual gearbox steering system. This is called a parallelogram. Now, why is it a parallelogram? Because you can see down here it's in a parallelogram shape. And what's going on if I turn this to the left or to the right down here? You can see you have an actual outer tie rod end, an inner tie rod end. In the blue there, you got a center link. And on this side, you have the actual gearbox. The gearbox down here with the worm and a sector shaft connects to a pitman arm, and then the pitman arm on the other side in gray over there, that's the actual idler arm that supports it on the other side. Now, we can check the ball joints on here as well. In order to check the ball joints though, you want to make sure what's the loaded and the following ball joint. So take a look at this graphic right here. If you see the springs up on the top of the graphic right there, that means that you got to go ahead and support the actual frame of it and then put a little wedge in there so you can loosen the ball joint, so when you pry up and down on the wheel, it's going to be fine. Now, if it's in the middle like the second graphic, now you want to take your jack placement and put it under your lower control arm. And why do you do that? Once again, to loosen up that tightness that's between those two ball joints, so you can put a pry bar on there and pick up and down and check your ball joints and make sure they're in good shape. Once again, dry park test. Turn it to the right or to the left. Make sure nothing's buckling under there. Have somebody look under there. It's not rocket science. Something's going to buckle, something's going to give. Now, there's another test you can do. It's called lateral and radial runout of your wheel. A lot of times people have problems with the suspension system, and it's simply in the wheel. Could be a pull, could be anything. So I have a dial indicator set up right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the dial indicator right here to the frame. And you guys can do this right at home. Go ahead and set it up to the wheel right here. And when I get it down on the wheel, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for any crazy run out. We're going to go ahead and spin it around. And when we're spinning it around, we're watching the dial indicator. And we really, whoa, now this has got a big flat spot on it. Watch it again. Here we go, here we go, here we go. Whoa, so we don't want any more than about 60 thousandths. That's a flat spot, you'll feel that. Now you can also take that dial indicator, you can put it on the outside over here, and you can do actual lateral run out. You can look at this graphic as well. You see radials up and down. That causes the vehicle to hop. Lateral, that's side to side. That's that little swaying or shimmy in the seat when you feel it. Belts in here can shift, you can have the problems. Now, once you have those problems, you start having tire wear problems. That looks like this here. This one had an actual camber issue on one side. Now, you can go out and inspect your tires as well. Take a look at this graphic right here. Now, this graphic here shows all different tire wear patterns, and you can do feathering on the top left up there. Now, feathering's a toe angle. You can do overinflation. You can see it's all in the middle there, all worn out. The two outsides is usually underinflation. One side wear, just like you saw, that's a camber issue. And then cupping or chunking, missing out of the tire, that's usually a suspension issue. Well, like I said, suspension's not rocket science. Just get out and check it out. Make sure it's in tip-top shape so your car's driving safe. Let's check in with Dave and see how far they're coming along.
Well, John, it was a lot easier pulling the old one out than it was putting the replacement back in. It was certainly a two-man job here, but we got it done. Took some maneuvering to get the control arm up into position, and we got it close. We had to grab a pry bar with a point on the end to get the holes matched up on the back on the bracket. Once we did that, though, the rest kind of fell into place. We had to get the bolt in place on the pivot point, and then finally we had where the ball joint attaches to the spindle. And we had to tap on the ball joint a little bit to get it into position. And we had to maneuver the spindle to get it into place, but we managed to put it up in there, drive the final bolt in, and we were all ready to go. And that should take care of our rattle. We've got a lot more suspension stuff coming up. In the meantime, coming up next, we've got John Gardner, the professor, with a little bit of Garage Ed. We'll be right back with more Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com.
Welcome back to Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com. Well, one of our favorite segments, Garage Ed. And today we're talking all about brake valves and bleeding the brakes. Let's start out with some brake valves. Now, each one of them has a unique job to do. So we can look at a metering valve. That's what this is right here. It's an actual metering, proportioning, and pressure differential. It's a combination in all three. Now, you can have them separate, but this one has it all together. And you can take a look at the graphic right there. Starting in the middle is actually the pressure differential. Now, the pressure differential turns on what's called your ribble light, your red brake warning light. That's important. If you have any fluid loss on either one of the channels or either one of the side of the brakes, it's going to kick up, it's going to kick on that light. You have a major problem. Time to stop the car, if you can stop the car. Now we'll go to the front of the valve over there. You see, that's the metering valve. Now the metering valve on a disc drum system holds off the disc brakes until the drums apply. Why is that? Well, the springs have to overcome the pressure, and it takes a little while for them to get out. So this valve is going to hold off so much pressure, maybe 25, 50 psi, to the fronts to allow the brakes to apply. That's on the front of the car, goes to the front line. Now here's another trick for you. You got a little tool right here. You may have to hold that open if you have one of those valves, because you're not going to get the pressure through if you're gravity bleeding, and we'll talk about that in a little while. Now the last one on here, this is actually a proportioning valve. Now I like to think of him of basically the traffic cop of fluid. He's in the rear line, and he's used to take away rear fluid under heavy brake apply. Why is that? Well, remember, it's all about those brake dynamics. As that nose of the car starts to dive, those rear wheels are going to come up. I don't need as much fluid back there, or they're going to lock up. So your proportioning valve goes to the rear line. So watch out for him too. Here's another one. This is a height sensing proportioning valve. And I got a trick for you, because this is in the rear line and it's hooked up to the frame and the suspension. So when it moves, it can actually vary the fluid to the rear brakes. Now, if you have a car up on a lift like we do, and the differential sagging down, this valve is going to be all the way closed, and you're never going to be able to bleed fluid out of the rear lines. So make sure you disconnect this arm, pull it up so you can bleed it. Now, speaking of bleeding, well, there's different techniques to bleeding a brake system as well. Why would you want to bleed it? Well, anytime you open up a system, you're going to introduce air into the system. Air is compressible and liquid's not. You get a case called brake fade, and you don't want that. So if you open it up or you actually boil brake fluid, we're going to bleed it. There's several methods to do it. Now, you can gravity bleed. You can just come over and open up the bleeder and let it drip. Make sure your master cylinder is topped off and full. You never want to run it dry. Now, we have our resident motorsports journalist, Dave, up in the car. We're going to talk to him in a minute, because we're going to do manual bleeding. That's a two-person job, and that's pretty much what we do most of the time here at Tech Garage. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook up a bottle here, and I'm going to catch the fluid, and we're going to have a line of communication. So, Dave, first off, do you know what a brake pedal is?
Yes, I do, John, because what speeds up must slow down. Very important in racing.
Absolutely. All right, so Dave, what you're going to do, we're going to do some manual bleeding. You're all familiar with it. Dave, I just want you to pump it up, but we have to have a line of communication, man, because that pedal has to be held before I open up this bleeder. So go ahead and pump it up.
Pumping and holding.
All right, once he's holding the pedal, or your friend's holding the pedal up there, what you can do is you can come down here and crack the bleeder at that time. The air's all going to be compressed, and it's going to shoot out that bleeder. I'm going to put it in a bottle here just in case he lets his foot off the pedal. I'll suck up fluid instead of getting air in the system, but he's not going to release the pedal until I tell him the bleeder's closed. So let's practice that one more time. Dave, bleeder's closed.
Pumping and holding.
Now I can open it and then do it once again. Keep doing it. Go around to the wheels. Good tip for you, you can always start on the wheel furthest from the master cylinder. The right rear, then go to the left rear, the right front, then the left front. Work your way that way. There's also a couple other methods. This one is called a vacuum bleeder. This is pretty cool. This takes a shop air source and you hook it to it. And what you can do, it's pretty non-intrusive. It doesn't mess with a lot of ABS systems. It's a one-man job. Just pull the trigger, put it on the bleeder. It creates a vacuum, and when it creates a vacuum, you're actually pulling the brake fluid from the master cylinder all the way down. It's a nice, easy way to do it. Just once again, make sure your master cylinder stays full. Last but not least, there's the old pressure bleeder right here. You get the adapter, put it on the cap of the master cylinder, fill it up, put pressure, you're forcing pressure from the master cylinder down. Remember, if you ever open up the system or the system gets hot, you get a spongy pedal, there's going to be air in the system and bleeding is going to be in order. Any one of these methods work well. But remember, you have a lot of nooks and crannies in the ABS system, all these valves. You may have to bleed the system multiple times. Be patient. You want to have a good pedal and you want to be safe when you're driving along. Well, stick around. We're coming back with the Master Technician Tech Tip. Hashtag MTTT. Say what? That's right. Right after this break, we'll be back with more Tech Garage presented by RockAuto.com.
Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com, is brought to you by Magic Creeper, the most versatile creeper ever. Steel rubber products, quality crafted rubber parts and weather stripping. And by RockAuto.com, all the parts your car will ever need.
12 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Oh, this one feels pretty good. Hey, welcome back to Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com. Just checking a wheel bearing over here at 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. And you know that's what this tech tip's all about, this Master Technician Tech Tip. Hashtag MTTT. We're going to look at wheel bearings. Let me give you a scenario. You're going down the road and you hear this hum. Woo, 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 woo. Could be a tire, could be a wheel bearing. How are you going to tell them apart? Well, here's a couple of tips for you. The first thing you can do is you can swerve the car to the right or to the left a little bit. You want to see if the noise changes, gets more, gets less pronounced, kind of isolate it to a side of a car. Also, you can change road surfaces. Well, what does that mean? Well, right here I got a tire. Let's just pretend we're actually going on concrete. And when I go from concrete and I go over to asphalt, if the noise changes, then it's probably a tire. If the noise stays the same, well, most likely it's a wheel bearing. So change road surfaces, swerve to the right and swerve to the left. A couple other things you can do. This is a pretty inexpensive stethoscope right here. You can get this at rockauto.com, and then you can put this on. You can actually put it on the wheel bearing itself, and you can spin the wheel bearing, and you can listen inside of there. You want to listen for any growling or any kind of noise. Pretty cool. I look like a doctor too, so that's not too bad. But what the deal is you're going to take the car up in the air. That may take 4,000 pounds off the car, so the noise might not be so loud, but a lot of times you can tell. I can spin this one right here. You don't hear anything. Take this other wheel bearing, and just that grinding right there, that's not good. That means that that bearing's starting to eat away. That's a wheel bearing. This is an actual integral wheel bearing of one part. A couple seasons ago, we talked about the Gen 1 wheel bearing. The Gen 1 wheel bearing is located right here, and it actually goes inside of here. The problem with this is you have to use a press. So what we did back a few seasons ago, we had our Woodward press. We actually took it, we pushed the bearing out. You have to push the spindle out. Once we did that, we had to set up a whole jig, a whole kinds of different adapters, and then push the bearing out from one side, reverse the procedure, push it back in. It's a long, drawn-out procedure, that's for sure. Now, if you really want to get precise, you can come over to this as a hub bearing. And this hub bearing right here actually has the bearings located inside of here. These are the old school bearings. You pull the cap off, you pack them, you put them back. But if you want to check the wheel bearing, you can put a dial indicator right there. I could tilt it back and forth, and you can see exactly what's going on, how much play you have. If it's sloppy, well, usually 3/1000ths to 5/1000ths more, you may have a problem. You want to go in there and snug them up. But if it's a Gen 1 bearing, you're going to have to go through a whole rigmarole. I sure wish there was a better way. I know there is. Let's check in with Tom and Dave and check out the better way before your wheel bearing ends up like this and your tire flies off your car.
Well, there is a better way, John, thanks to rockauto.com. And Tom, how are you making things easier for folks out there?
Our manufacturers are combining parts together to make a complete assembly. So you take 4 or 5 parts, you get them all put together. There's less chance of surprises. You get partway into the project, you discover something's bent, something's corroded, something's stripped. You just put it all on at once, you're done, and you're successful.
For me, any project, you think you got it all licked when you go to the auto parts store, but invariably there's 40 or 50 trips left because you've forgotten something or you bent something. The thing I really love about the assemblies too is the manufacturer has made sure everything matches. It's sort of match set and it all works together.
Right, yeah, it's one manufacturer, make sure the tolerances are just right and it all fits together. Yeah, no surprises there also.
It saves you time and it works, and you thought of everything too. Even the axle nut is in here because a lot of folks don't realize these are not reusable. You should only use them once.
Yeah, on some models they're not reusable, and that's an example of if you do reuse it, you're not really doing the repair completely right. So yeah, you get it as a unit, no surprises. You're successful.
Well, you can do it right and get it done the first time thanks to our friends at rockauto.com.
All right, little jounce test. No clunks or rattles sitting still here, Dave.
Well, I've got a few clunks and rattles up here, but I think our vehicle is looking pretty good. We just need to take it for a test drive.
Yeah, and you know, my kids are fully grown and driving. You got a beautiful family. Family truckster could be a little vacation ride.
We could use the room. I'll take it.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know what? We're out of time for this week, folks, but it's been a great show. We hope you join us next week for more Tech Garage presented by rockauto.com.
Production assistance for Tech Garage is provided by Chipola College, located in Marianna, Florida. Founded in 1947, Chipola was ranked recently as one of the top 3 community colleges in the United States.